beauty of
Hello and welcome to Press TV's News Analysis, coming to you from Tehran. I'm Marzi Hashmi. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, Afghan's President Hamid Karzai has pointed the finger at invading forces for the roots and corruption problems in his country. Karzai has said that corruption is a bitter reality in Afghanistan. He said the Afghan side of corruption, which exists in offices, is on a smaller scale than the other part of the corruption, the Afghan president said, which is one of bigger scale. And these are the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, that's from others, which is imposed on Afghanistan. And it said that the corruption in this country is in a very rampant situation. Stay with us as we take a look on the latest out of Afghanistan and corruption.
Locals saying prayers over the bodies of civilians killed in a bomb blast in Afghanistan. Bombings and shootings are still rampant across the war-torn nation, some 11 years into the US-led occupation. However, insecurity isn't the only problem plaguing the country. There is also extensive corruption. Afghanistan regularly ranks as one of the world's most corrupt countries. But who is to blame? Afghan officials are pointing the finger at foreign countries. President Hamid Karzai has described corruption as a bitter reality from which his country is suffering.
Corruption exists in Afghanistan. It is a reality, a bitter reality. The part of this corruption that is in our offices is on a smaller scale, and this is in the form of bribes. The other part of corruption, which is on a bigger scale, are hundreds of millions of dollars. This is not ours. We shouldn't blame ourselves for that.
Afghan citizens are angry at the pervasive corruption in the country and urge authorities to take serious measures to tackle the problem.
Administrative corruption is increasing day by day in our country. We do not know what the reason is. We want to see a decrease in administrative corruption in Afghanistan.
Karzai said that the Afghan government has been making strides in the fight against corruption, but he admitted that there is still much work to be done.
In order to fight graft, we must reform our administration and make sure we pay enough salary to our employees based on our country's economy and make sure their future are guaranteed. Then, of course, we can eliminate a big part of existing corruption in our country.
Karzai further maintained that internal graft is negligible when compared with what some foreign governments get away with. He accused them of giving contracts to high-ranking Afghan officials or to their relatives in an effort to gain influence over the government. These days, nearly every Afghan citizen has a story of having to pay a bribe to authorities, organizations, or even NGOs in order to get what they need. The US and its Western allies invaded Afghanistan with the stated aim of toppling the Taliban regime and dismantling the al-Qaeda hideouts there. But the war has left thousands of Afghans dead and has failed to improve conditions in the country. Now it appears that before leaving the country, the US and its allies will have left a legacy not only of destruction and death, but that of massive corruption too.
I'd like to welcome my guest to the program, the director of Kabul Center for Strategic Studies, Mr. Waliullah Rahmani in Kabul, author of Apocalyptic Realm, a jihadist in South Asia, Dilip Hero in London, and out of Islamabad, professor of Quaid-ul-Azam University, Mr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspo. Thank you so much for being with us. We'd like to start this off in Kabul with Mr. Rahmani. Now, President Karzai has made a passionate speech saying that fingers have to be pointed of some at the Afghans for corruption, but actually the main perpetrators of the corruption, the Americans themselves. First of all, why do you think he has chosen this time to say that, and exactly what does it mean?
Well, I think that the Afghan president has been very strong in his voice against Americans in the past year or so on various issues, including corruption. I believe that his government has been accused by Western allies, including the Americans, that is a corrupt government, and of course he has not done enough to tackle corruption in Afghanistan. For that reason, I think right now the president has taken an offensive action, reaction to the Americans' accusation, stating that it is more of the big and large contracts of the United States Army in Afghanistan that's supporting and promoting corruption in Afghanistan.
Okay.
This is a debate. This is what the scenario is. But according to me, I believe that there are both, potential from both players on the ground on promoting corruption in Afghanistan. I believe that the heavy weight of promotion of corruption goes to the weak structures of the Afghan government that has been established in the past 10 years. I do think that if we had more potential, if we had been more active in putting strict mechanisms through our civilian government, I think that we would have been in a stronger position to even stop corruption inside
you just made an interesting point. Let me switch over to London and continue with the point that you had just made. Mr. Hero, our guest in Kabul, said basically that if the civilian government had put in the right, implemented the right situation, that it could have actually perhaps made the situation better. However, when we look at it, what President Karzai has said is that he said that the Americans have actually picked some of the most corrupt individuals to have contracts with, and it is not the Afghans, that it's in their hands as far as handing out the contracts. What's your perspective on that? How much of this do you think that the Afghan government itself is responsible, and how much of it do you think that the Americans are actually behind the majority of the corruption in the country?
Well, I think, you see, one has to make a distinction between what you call bribery and corruption. The bribery is a petty thing. You know, like, say, if you are driving a car, if you're speeding, and then the police, traffic, policeman stops you, and then you give him some local currency, and he lets you go. That is, what you may call bribery. Or if in office, your case has to move from one desk to another, and you have to give some money to the clerk to move it. That is what I call bribery. Corruption is a much bigger thing. Corruption is like, say, if you're going to give a contract to say, we are going to move all these supplies to go from, say, Kabul or from Jalalabad to all these forward bases of Americans, and each truck will be so much, and how much it will cost, and there we're talking of billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. That's where you get the percentage and you get the corruption. I'll give you exact figures. You mentioned my book, Apocalyptic Realm, Jihadists in South Asia, in which I gave this figure. The bribery, what you call administrative corruption, the figures in Afghanistan are, in the whole year, $1 billion. $1 billion, okay? The GDP, gross domestic product, of all of Afghanistan is $12 billion. Do you know how much America is spending each month? Each month they're spending $1 billion. So American expense on their troops and all the contracts, $12 billion a year, is the same as the total GDP of all of Afghanistan of 30 million people. So that gives you the proportion. That's one. But when it comes to American money, it's not only what's going to the military. There are so many of these, State Department has its own reconstruction program, Britain has a reconstruction program, and you know that it has been shown that 90%, 90% of United States AID, what you call the development fund, disappears. It does not reach the people to whom it's supposed to reach.
Okay, well, I want to look at that aspect of it. Let me turn to Islamabad. Mr. Jasper, with the statistics that have just been given, saying that 90% of the money or what has been appropriated for individuals in Afghanistan basically never reaches them. Why would the United States allow something like this to happen? Are they the ones actually getting the kickbacks in your perspective?
I think that we have to not ignore what is the American laws, what is the American customs tells us. Whatever the Americans offer you aid, we in Pakistan has been experiencing the same thing. Out of more than 60% never come to Pakistan or Afghanistan. It's spent there because they give the aid in order to support their own employees. The aid means enhancing employment within the United States. According to the United Nations reports, not more than 15 or 60% go on the ground. So this is a reality, whether we like it or not. On the other side, when you say corruption, President Karzai is now trying to become after two tenure because he has no third tenure option in the constitution of Afghanistan. He is trying to live in the age, or you can say in the history, that he was outrightly right person spoken. But when we talk about corruption, we have to identify who are the biggest beneficiary out of this corruption. Of course, in Afghanistan, Karzai family. And in that context, when we look about it, we find it number of the peoples are working out. Yes, systematically speaking, and what the political international economy tells us academically, it reveals us that any state which gives you any economic assistance, it first say, okay, these things will be research analysis, data collection, it will be done by our people. So that's why it never reach on the ground, and that's why we feel this economic assistance actually, it's a face saving, no assistance, it's more corruption, whether you call it corruption or you call it custom in their own governmental structures functioning.
So are you saying, Mr. Jasper, basically, Mr. Karzai, this is just lip service that he's paying, that because you're saying that he and his family are the largest beneficiaries. Do you think that the bulk of the corruption, I'm trying to get understanding of what you're saying, the bulk of the corruption actually is initiated from inside of the country, or as he is saying, as he's pointing the finger, elsewhere?
I think that we have to not ignore who is Karzai. Who make him president? Americans. And with that, what is his legitimacy in Afghanistan? I think out of Kabul, his legitimacy is questionable. Within that context, if the aid is coming in Afghanistan, naturally it's coming with some kind of stingers or some kind of conditions. Within these conditions, when we look at, we cannot ignore in the world there are dual nationals, there are NGOs, international governmental organizations, and number of the United Nations and independent, you can report, has established these organizations work in these areas. They have, you can say, give the analogy of grasshoppers. They jump from one country to other country and suck the aid and build them themselves, but the aid cannot benefit the local peoples. What Karzai is now saying, he's trying to hide his own crimes. And in the last 10 years, whatever happening, why he wasn't speaking? I think he's only fingering or pointing out. I think his pointing out is correct. We have to see it. The Western aid never ever trickled on, even if there's no corruption. And the biggest scandal which we have noticed nowadays, that is Kabul Bank. And within the Kabul Bank, money from where is coming?
Okay.
It's coming from
well, let me turn to Kabul and get Mr. Rahmani back in on this discussion. Your take, Mr. Rahmani, on what our guest has just said in Islamabad, that basically the roots of the problem is actually Mr. Karzai himself.
I think our friend in Islamabad, he should update his information first, and second, when he's coming from Qaid-e-Azam University, I understand that, and I expect as an Afghan that he comes with some sort of realistic analysis of what is going on. I do believe that as an Afghan citizen, I think that our president has tried a lot in a country that has been torn by war and conflict for the past 4 decades. And I believe that the structures that has been established, they are by the demand of the Afghans. The president of Afghanistan is a legitimate Afghan president who has come through presidential elections. And of course, he has been someone who's trying to strengthen this country, which has experienced decades of conflicts, war, and interferences from countries in our neighborhood. So while I believe that I don't agree, I'm afraid to agree with the analysis that's coming from our friend in Pakistan. I think that there are several major reasons for corruption in Afghanistan. I believe that we did not have strong structures, state structures, to fulfill the demands of a modern contracting system that's coming out of the United States. I believe that we are still a country at war, which is dominated by insurgency and terrorism. And of course, in such a country, I mean, fulfilling each and everyone's responsibility, having transparency and accountability is hard and difficult. And I believe that all these, I mean, those stakeholders who are working in Afghanistan, intentionally they are not doing so. I think that our president is one of the most clean people I can believe that exist in Afghanistan, but of course there are rumors against his family, and of course there are rumors against many other stakeholders in the country. I do believe that there are many political motivations behind whatever accusation that's coming in. I think that while these are the one side of the story and one of the realities on the ground, at the same time there is another story of Afghanistan, unfortunately, that I think, I mean, when there is the international community, they have made strategic mistakes, not only in terms of how they are spending their money and how they have spent their money in Afghanistan, but also in terms of countering the insurgency and approaching the terrorism. I do think that
let me turn to Mr. Hero in London and looking at that as far as how the international community. You wanted to comment, sir? Go ahead.
May I think
you see,
London, please. Go ahead.
Yes, I think you see.
I think that
again, just to take on the point about the structures and so on, basically what happens, it's important to have a big picture. The big picture is that Afghanistan economically and administratively is an underdeveloped country. Now, in that underdeveloped country, if we're throwing all these millions and billions of dollars, that particular system cannot absorb it. So you see what's happening, all these things we're talking about, these kickbacks and so on and so forth, the people are getting that. They are not investing in Afghanistan, that all the money is going to Dubai. And they are buying real estate in Dubai, they are putting their money in Dubai. You see, so that's one thing. Secondly, again, I go back to what I said earlier about my book, Apocalyptic Realm. I have looked at what happened in South Vietnam. Remember in South Vietnam, Americans were there in the 60s, early 70s. Same thing happened. They put so much money into South Vietnam that you see they increased the army to 1 million people. And so what would happen is that the commanders would write names of people who were not soldiers and take their money. Same thing happening in Afghanistan as well. So essentially, if you have a poor country, if you throw all this money, it simply cannot absorb it because there is no administrative system, there's no economic system to absorb it. So basically,
well, let me just jump in here. You're saying if it's a poor country, let me just jump in here, sir. If it's a poor country, they cannot handle it, they cannot absorb it. But when we're talking about, for example, the United States coming in a situation in Afghanistan, do you think that Washington would know or not to know how to implement this situation? Do they not know that despite billions and billions of dollars being spent there, that as President Karzai has said, that security is still a major issue?
But I think, you see, look at the basics. You know, within the police force itself and the army, 85% of them illiterate. So unless you start a process to make people literate, I mean, can you believe this, that when there's a policeman, he cannot read the license plate of a car. See, so you see, there's a very weak base, and in that weak base, all this money is being thrown, and exactly what I said in South Vietnam, same thing happened in Afghanistan. Because most people cannot sign, soldiers cannot sign, so they put a thumb impression. So the commander gets all the salaries, 30% or 20% are ghost soldiers, ghost policeman. He puts the money in his pocket and puts some impressions.
So
in that situation,
why
it's
would
very
the United
difficult.
States, Mr. Hira, why would the United States, if what you're saying is true, why would the United States and the other Western countries decide to stay in this country that long and knowing that situation is, that basically it's a no-win situation if it is, according to what you've said?
No, I think you have to go back to square one. You know, when initially Americans went in, when Rumsfeld was in charge of the Pentagon, he openly said, we are not in the business of nation building. Now, somewhere along the line, because when the Americans bombed and the Taliban ran away from Kabul and so on and so forth, there were only 300 CIA people on the ground. Now, somewhere along the line, that thing changed. So the whole idea, we are going to make Afghanistan a democratic country, equal right for women, equal right for minorities, you know, and all that basically changed.
Okay, let me get Islamabad back in on this. Sorry, Mr. Hiro. Mr. Jasper, your perspective in on all of this. Do you think that the United States going into this in the beginning, as our guest had said, initially really wanted to try to get a democratic country, a country filled with security? And if so, why has they been able to accomplish that 11 years into this mission? Do you think corruption plays a part in it?
Absolutely.
Islamabad, Mr. Jasper?
Yeah, I think that if the Americans were interested in democratic, of course we find it. They had the elections there. President Karzai, according to the system, he came up. And that's why we say he's an elected president in Afghanistan. But the question is that whether in that election from the corner, from the southern eastern Afghans participated, it's a questionable, it's a debatable. Now the point is that when we talk about democratic system, we have to also keep in mind that how many soldiers in the 11 years American lost? 1,200. They were not interested to control Afghanistan. There were some other reasons. We do not forget when you say, why Afghanistan? Afghanistan is a bridge between the Central Asian and the rest of the world's oil and gas reservoirs. And for that, everyone is investing. Chinese are theirs, Americans are theirs, we are theirs, Indians are theirs. And unfortunately, my Afghan brothers have to suffer. But when you refer with this corruption, it's a big deal. And this corruption is not, and I think President Karzai, though he's a man of the Americans, but at the same time, he had a courage to point out or fingering that these all aid donors, they are corrupt. And I think in the 21st century, people have to realize, and the developing nation has to realize, what is the negativity of these aid donors. And with these aid donors, they create fifth columns, and if you say President Karzai is saying corruption, but these NGOs we have funded by the American or these kind of organizations, actually, they are creating fifth column within the Afghanistan for their own objectives.
All right, well, Mr. Rahmani, the last words, we only have a minute left. What do you think it's going to take, or will your country be able to go on and beyond this type of corruption that the president's been talking about?
Well, I think we need a political stability in the country. We need a courage to see that we will be surviving beyond 2014. And I believe that Afghans believe that they will survive beyond 2014 in the new process that has started after 2014. When the survival of a state is guaranteed, I do believe that in a matter of time, you could tackle an issue like corruption. And I believe that it is highly politicized that now we are talking of corruption as the major issue of Afghanistan. I do think that it is one of the main issues in Afghanistan, but more is a concern that we have to sustain and survive in the country beyond 2014 so that alongside corruption, we should be able to address more issues.
Okay, well, thank you so much, all of my guests, for being with me from Afghanistan, from Kabul, Director of Kabul Center for Strategic Studies, Mr. Waliullah Rahmani, author of Apocalyptic Realm, Jihadists in South Asia, Dilip Hiro from London, and Professor Khwarazm University, Mr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal out of Islamabad. And thank you, viewers, for being with us, and make sure you join us right here, same time, same place tomorrow. I'm Marzia Hashimi, signing out for myself and all the crew right here in Tehran. Thanks so much, and goodbye.